Hi, I'm Marisa Janaku.
And I'm Michelle Wungsmanawi.
And welcome to By Association, a show where we talk about the connection between creative entrepreneurs and their collective drive to bring a product or brand with purpose to the consumer. A connection usually starts with a drink, and this is how we'll start our show. Sharing a bottle of wine or champagne, and understanding why this bottle is special to our guest. Here we go.
Yeah.
Episode 3.
Here at Grandpa Studio in Rotterdam.
Perfect. And we're here with Matthijs de Jongh. I'm saying it right?
That's correct.
Right. I know Matthijs through my weekly job, let's say, at Citizen M as marketing director. So Matthijs works at Kessels Kramer, and they are a communication agency, creative communication agency, and we work together with them on various campaigns that we've done over the globe and over the years. So Matthijs, introduce yourself.
Yeah, so you're right, Matthijs de Jongh. I'm responsible for strategy within Kessel Kramer, and I started very long ago, longer than I would like to admit. Kessel Kramer is next year 25 years old, started in 96, end of 96. Yeah. And I joined soon after to do all the planning, the strategic planning.
Oh, great.
For all clients. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. So the show is very simple. We're going to have a conversation, talk about how you build brands, what you've done over the years. But we're going to start, of course, with the bottle that you brought with you. So please explain to us what you brought with you, and then we can start drinking.
But I'm going to interrupt you because I always take the occasion, if I can, to express my love for Rotterdam. We are in Rotterdam now. First, it was planned for Amsterdam. I live in Amsterdam. Right. I love Amsterdam, but I also love Rotterdam. And you know that there's always a bit of tension between Amsterdam and Rotterdam. But Rotterdam is the place where my life in the Netherlands started. So I was born in the US. I have Dutch parents. Right. And my father worked for 4 years in California, and that's where I was born. And when they moved back, they rented a car, drove to New York, and they took the boat to Rotterdam. Oh. And that boat is the SS Rotterdam, the steamship Rotterdam. Oh, wow. And that's in the harbor here still. They made a hotel out of it with restaurants. Yeah. And so my first steps were at what now Hotel New York is.
Oh, wow.
So I always feel, anxious to go to Rotterdam. And, so I'm very happy to be here and also honored to be in your podcast.
No, nice. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Which part of Rotterdam have you lived in?
I haven't lived here. Yeah, we didn't start here, but I have lived here in my student period. All right. So that was in my 20s, early 20s. I lived in the Vlagmanstraat.
Where's that?
That's a side street of the Bergweg. Not so far from here. Yeah, north. Yeah. So north of the Hofplein. But I lived here for, I think, 3/4 of a year. Like the city. It's nice.
Yeah, it still is very nice to live here, out here.
Okay, so...
what did you bring with you?
The wine, I brought with you a wine from Portugal. Okay. From South Portugal, from the Alentejo region, which is about 200 kilometers south east of Lisbon. And there is a winery area and an estate which is called Esprao, or I don't
Esprao, yeah.
I don't pronounce the E, but it's spelled Esprao, but you say Sprao. And I brought this with me because it's a client of Kessel Kramer. Okay. So that's easy. In the tradition of David Ogilvy, you don't know him because he's the grandfather of advertising from the 60s, Mad Men period. Yeah. And he always said that he wanted to, try the products that he works for. Okay. And the story goes that he worked for Rolls-Royce. Mm. So that was an easy one for him. And he wrote a famous ad for Rolls-Royce with the line, at 60 miles per hour, the loudest noise in this Rolls-Royce comes from the electric clock. it's so outdated. Hey? There's no advertising anymore that takes that much time and that much space for a heading, and also now it's a weird line because you have a Tesla and
you hardly hear.
At that time it was very special. I think first to have an electric clock in a car. And then that the Rolls Royce was very silent. So also I use the products that we advertise. So I stay in Citizen and I'm wearing my Vans shoes. I also worked for. Ironically, I haven't been there.
Okay, I was about to say.
I'm a bit pissed off about it because my colleagues, many of my colleagues went there, and it's fantastic region. Mm-hmm. It's a bit hilly. Creeks, enough water, oaks, cork trees.
Mm-hmm. So why haven't you been there? It's not that far, right?
No, but I haven't worked on it myself directly. Yeah. So
how long have they been a client of yours?
I think about 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's quite a special company because that region is for centuries already well known for its vineyards and also olive trees. Mm-hmm. So on the bottle it says Sprouw and it says 1267.
Wow.
Yeah. So Sprouw itself as a name started in the 70s, early 70s, but the vineyards have been centuries old, and they are all talking about purpose. They're all organic, biological, and they also support local communities with supporting the crafts. So the original ancient local crafts, mm-hmm. they support like weaving, pottery, painting the houses with white chalk, that kind of stuff.
Are they still family owned, or is it more?
It's family owned, but it's recent that it's Sprouw, mm-hmm. and what I did is I didn't take the Reserva, so the top wine. I thought that would be too easy to take the best wine from them and take it here. But Monte Velho, that's the name of this wine, and I took a white one because I like white. Is more of a wine made for a wider audience. So they make top wines, but in the 80s they thought about, okay, we make this great wines, but it's not very accessible for a larger audience. So they decided to make a, let's say, within the process, make one that is more accessible, using also grapes from the area. So it's a mixed grape wine, and so it's a high value wine for an affordable price. And
what's the price?
It goes for around 6-7 euros.
All right.
$10 in the US. They also sell it in the US. Mm-hmm. And so this is a very well known regular wine in Portugal. Everybody knows it.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's also a export product. But the people, the Vinologues, the people who know all about it, they see it as a very good buy, a value proposition, as we would call it, exactly. Like Citizen M. Citizen M is also you have a luxury experience, but by taking away a few things, you get a very good price, and that's a value proposition. So Monte Velho is not the most expensive, but it's a very good wine for a good price.
All right,
and the downside of it is that it got so well known in Portugal that for many people it became mainstream. So if you see it too much, then
it's no more. It's not special anymore.
Not special anymore. And for the younger audience, they see it as the parents' wine that the parents always drunk. And this is a cycle that I see very often happening with many brands.
Okay.
So we have worked in the past for Heineken, for instance, but that's 20 years ago. And Heineken was suffering in the Netherlands the same kind of problem. That Heineken was your father's beer. Not you would not drink it when you were in your teens or early 20s, because it's
not hip enough.
Not hip enough,
Right.
not interesting, so too mainstream. But in essence, it's good beer, and in essence, this is very good wine. If you take it objectively, but sometimes it can just be over the hill.
Right.
Yeah. And would you say that's also where the Reserva that they make tries to also kind of bring it back to being more special, or is it more just the brand itself that was suffering?
No, it's this one, this Monte Velho.
This specific
you
one.
buy it in the supermarket in Portugal, and people who know that it's a good wine, but it's just like
common.
you say, it's not.
No, but it's
enough,
true. But it's true. Here, when you go shop for a wine, when you want to get a nice wine, you don't go to the supermarket, right? You go to the wine specialist. You go to the wine store. Is really the mentality.
Exactly, and I think it also happened with, in the jeans industry, like Diesel and Levi's.
Yes.
They are really nice brands, but then Acne comes from Sweden, and that's much more interesting because they do it differently, and it's new, and
it's a whole nother experience.
But is that also price? Because like the Levi's, for example, the price gets a lot more accessible, and you come with the nudies, or you come with much more specialer jeans that the prices are higher, so they're people see them as, oh, it must be something better. Yeah. Is that something that happens then, or?
I think that can be part of it, but again, objectively, I admire Levi's as a company very much. They have this really rich history, but I think especially in the US, they are not the audience in the US is not willing to pay more than $30 or $40-50 for a pair of jeans. So that's what they are catered to, and they lost their sexiness and interest. And that could be that and then other brands come in and they make it more special and more expensive as well. I see it for Timberland. We also work for Timberland, and Timberland has this same challenge that it's a big brand. They make fantastic shoes, high quality, very solid, known for their boots. The yellow boot, and they have 1,200 stores, so they have their own retail. But after a while, it's just too common, too mainstream.
What you said before, like the cycle, it was back like a year ago, something like 2 years ago, and now it died out again. But then in a few years, it will be hip again. So exactly. Ongoing.
But for a younger audience, younger generation, the Gen Z. Now that we work for a project that is focusing on them, and then you use totally different type of storytelling, messaging, more, let's say, inviting, more interaction.
Right.
Instead of just we have our product here, it's in our store, come and get it.
Do you also advise Timberland on the design or what's in fashion now, so they can adjust elements?
No, but interestingly, the project we work for. If please interrupt me, because
no. I'm thinking we could pour the wine first quickly, and then whilst you drink the wine,
let's go.
This is the story of Timberland. because I'm looking at that wine, and I really want to try it out.
Okay, there you go.
Sound effects and everything.
You're working with a creator here,
right?
When you
thank you very much. Thank you.
No, I saw the wine there, and I was thinking, the conversation is very interesting, but I don't want to. After an hour, that the wine's still there. Let's enjoy it. Perfect. Thank you. But you really want to go back, so you've never been to this area. So is that something is it on your agency bucket list to go visit?
You know what? That's interesting. I was thinking about it. I have never been in Portugal, I admit.
You want to take a sip, okay? Cheers.
Sure. Yeah.
Cheers.
Wow. Thank you.
Cheers. There we go.
I'm really bad at describing, but I like it. But usually when he goes out, like it's fruity, it's this, is that, but I just like it.
Well,
it is fruity, so you're right about
fruity.
It. And it's a bit citric.
I think it opens up when it gets a bit warmer. It'll open up a bit more, no?
Maybe I brought it. I cooled it down a bit too much. Or,
no, but I think it's nice. You can kind of, if you let it sip a bit as you go along. That's nice.
But I've been in many places, not in Portugal, and I was thinking about it that before this conversation, of course, I thought about what will I bring. I said to you first, I bring the kinderchampagne. Because it was in the morning. But now it's 4 o'clock, so this is allowed. So I looked into the story of Sprau and its history, and then you get excited. And I think that's different from what I said before. Like when it's mainstream, when everybody knows it, it might get it lose its interestingness. But on the other hand, there's this social psychologist from the 60s. He is called Robert de Jongh, and he did research. And one of the results was that he proved that familiarity breeds liking. If you know something really well, you start to like it, and that was actually also the start from for the repetitive advertising. So think detergent advertising. The more often you see an ad, the more you start to like it.
And the tune, if the tune is right and it's singing in your head, and you start whistling it yourself. When you're shopping.
The power of repetition. That's what he proved. And he called it familiarity breeds liking. And when I look into Sprau and Monte Velho and I read about it, and when I gain knowledge and know more about it, I want to go there. I want to see it and want to dive into it. So I like that for brands a lot. Also Timberland. It's a bit mainstream. If I go into the store, I don't find that often something really for me. But if you look into the history and how they built their brand, which is 100 years old, and when they came with the yellow boot in '73, that it's a fascinating story.
Iconic boot.
Yeah, that makes you want to have it. So
Matthijs, you introduced yourself, but how do you describe what you do at Kessels Kramer?
Yeah, the shortest version is that I advise clients how to spend their money. Given a certain challenge or problem, I always prefer to call it a problem, because problems ask to be solved.
Right.
And often clients say, but it's so negative, it's called a problem. It's a challenge. We have this desire to win market share or introduce a new product or gain interest from a different audience. So I get confronted from many different clients. Can be a wine or a shoe brand or a hotel or a museum or a government, and they come with different assignments, challenges. And what I do is that I advise them to what to do with it. So the plan. As a planner, as a strategist, I'm responsible to define, what audience are we talking to, or what are we going to say, through which media. So the bigger plan to build a campaign.
And this is what you have been doing since the beginning, right?
Yes, since the beginning.
And were you also a partner from the beginning? You're a partner, right?
Yes, I'm a partner, yeah. But back to my shortest description,
right.
In the end, it also comes down to the budget, the money you have. So, and that's an important part, and often forgotten part, because we like to see ourselves as a company also as entrepreneurs. Feeling a lot of responsibility for the money we spend for our clients, and the budget also tells something about what is realistic and what is not. So you have a certain amount of money and you want to introduce a new brand or a new product. Is that then realistic or not?
And that's one of the first things you talk about, is really about,
how much money do you have?
Because some brands, I would suspect, who come to you then say want to do the big things, but their budgets are small, and you just have to do a bit of reality check.
It's not the first thing we ask, to be honest, but it's part of it, and it's more like a measurement of how realistic a request is. But we have very small clients as well, which we still like to do. In the hospitality, for instance, the Hans Brinker Budget Hotel, we have from the beginnings one of the first clients. They don't have much money, but they have really nice guts and they dare to stand out, take risks. And interestingly, the Brinker is a budget hotel, and it's very basic in the center of Amsterdam. And like David Ogilvy, we went there, we stayed there, and we realized that it's a horrible place to stay. It's very noisy. The staff is very rude. There's big groups of Italians, Germans, English that don't sleep there. And so when we went back to the office, we discussed it, and we actually came up with the idea to be honest about the shortcomings. So not to come up with a story to promote it and with lies to make it better than it is, but we said let's be honest in a very rude way.
Right.
And how did they react at Hans Brinker? Was initially saying yes, okay, we're going to do this, or was it a bit of apprehension?
No, the owner is liking this mentality a lot. So his character is also always to fight with the neighbors, with the city council. So he really has that mentality as well, to be rude and And actually, it did very well for the hotel itself, because it gained this reputation, this worldwide reputation of a hotel that is happy to have such bad service. And
but the guests know what to expect. That's what it's about.
Exactly. So that was a side effect, that the amount of complaints decreased. So it was not the goal of the campaign, but so people know what they get.
Yeah.
And,
okay. And before Kessels, where did your life in creative advertising start? I mean, what did you study, and how did you take your path to Kessels, or did you start at Kessels straight out of school?
No. I started in advertising, apart from a lot of side jobs. Of which the first one was to deliver the newspapers. But I studied mass communication, publicistiek in Nijmegen, the university. But before I went to the HAO, communication study. So I was always really fascinated by the reaction of the audience to media content, and the power of media, and how a message gets through, and how it changes perception of people. Also, what news does to create the picture of the world you have. It depends a lot what type of news you consume, makes your perception. So that's why I was fascinated by. So I studied communication, and in during that study, I really liked the process of creativity. So how to get to an idea, to an original idea, to an original, let's say, view on a certain subject or assignment.
And how do you do it? How do you find an original idea? What's the process?
It's the $1 million question. There's no one answer to that. So you could say it's a process of lateral thinking, of let's say connecting different paths of thinking together that makes a new idea happening. So when you get an assignment, not to focus on the assignment only, but what now many academics describe as do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the subconscious mind, the assignment, the problem is being processed, and you get an apple drops on your head, and then
and there's it.
Eureka!
Right. So every creative process has been different for you, or it's not like.
Of course, there are ways to stimulate it. What we do in our office, you've been in our office. We are in Amsterdam, based in a formal nunnery. So it's a church-like building, and we've created an environment which is quite diverse, eclectic. Many different objects, art, and a bit like also Citizen M in a way is a good environment to get ideas by just looking around, and it's not sterile as an environment. And we tend to not brainstorm too much. Brainstorming is also one of the tricks, or supposed tricks to get to ideas. So you connect to other people. What you are doing with your podcast, what I read about, making these connections.
Yeah.
You're being stimulated by someone else's views, and I think it's a combination. So you get your inspiration from outside what you're thinking about. Can also be consuming media, reading a paper, whatever. But it's also hard work. So it's also thinking about it, trying different things. And I think you also have to be a more than average media consumer to look around a lot, visit museums.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you did communication study, and you were curious. So what was your first kind of job within the industry? Where did you start out?
That was actually in Rotterdam. So I did my traineeship in Rotterdam at what was the agency called? It's still there. Forgot.
We'll look it up.
What's big agency? It was at WTC in the top floor. I remember it was
WTC. No, only the biggest agency. Yeah. From back then was ARA.
ARA. Yeah.
Is it that one?
Yeah.
Oh.
My God, then I forgot that. There you go, ARA.
That was your internship.
I worked there. Yeah.
Didn't leave an impression. Or did it?
It did. No, it did. I mean, it was still, in the days of the Roman Empire when advertising was still alive. It's dead now. So,
we'll go into that if advertising is really dead, and your point of view on that. But
of course,
but let's go into that. I mean, let's go into that. Do you think advertising is dead?
Yeah, I mean, the advertising as it was is dead, of course, but. There will always be advertising. So it's more of a definition.
So the traditional way that advertising was founded, right, in the Mad Men area, it was kind of that's dead. It's now a new way. Advertising comes in different ways.
Yeah, but it's in a way it's very simple. You have a business. Say you are a bicycle repairman. And your company is in the street. You sell some bicycles, and you don't need to advertise yourself much because you have a nice audience. People come to you, and one day, a few doors down the road, another bicycle man comes, and he's stealing your clients. What do? Then you start to come up with ideas to promote yourself,
right?
Yep.
And to stand out and to have a distinct message. And how do you call it now? advertising? No, maybe not. But
marketing, advertising. It's
exactly.
All about
so you or maybe you call it. You have to find your purpose, and that purpose must be a bit different. But if all banks are now into, defining their social purpose, and it start to look like alike. Then one bank will go, okay, wait a minute, I'm gonna take a different path, and then the audience will think, hey, that's interesting, that's new. Yeah, so I think it's always about finding this different angle.
Yeah, but why is it that? What's your view on that?
Now, advertising, as we know, because of the digital developments, I think for a long time advertising was not aware of the results. So the research was not that specific as we can do it now with the data. So when you throw a message out, immediately you get feedback, you get data feedback, and you know, okay, is this sticking with my audience or not? And back in the days, you didn't know it. So there's also this saying, half of your budget is wasted, but you don't know which half. So you have to go with it anyway. But I think that creativity nowadays is getting more and more under pressure, because if you are aiming for a large audience, for a mainstream audience, you will also get a mainstream desire for the type of messaging. So if you have a very creative idea, it's very likely that it's not attracting a very large mainstream audience, because they find it maybe a bit
too niche.
And is that a challenge you're facing now with a lot of agency or a lot of clients that say,
I think so,
hey, the creative's not performing well, so we need to do, just do the standard what's there, and therefore just attracting the standard client?
I think that the detailedness of knowledge that we now have through data, so the direct feedback, is driving a lot of marketeers to be risk avoiding and short term in their
goals,
in their goals, in their strategy. So it needs it needs courage and risk taking to take a different path. That is more difficult than before, but it will be rewarding. In many cases, you see that it's rewarding. I think that Timberland has a very good data-driven strategy, but it's big, so they are forced to search for new ways, for new frontiers.
And is that also where purpose plays a role? So when you bring in a purpose of a brand, let's say, instead of just advertising to the masses?
That's a good question. So what I said earlier, purpose, I think, is a very broad term. So a purpose, you can also have as a purpose to make many people laugh about what you do, or you can have a purpose to look to make people look very attractive and sexy. But purpose nowadays is very much seen as social purpose.
Exactly.
It's like doing good, and which I see as a very positive development. I think that's very good. It's what the audience demands. I don't know how big that is, but
how big the audience is.
How many people are really concerned about the state of the planet, for instance, and so you see big companies. I was looking it up. We work for DSM, which is a royal chemical company in the south of the Netherlands. They started as a coal mining company, and their purpose is creating brighter lives for all people. Don't laugh. It's our client.
No. I mean, it's just it can work for a lot of brands. This way, a light bulb factory is the same. You could
exactly.
Use the
same now you immediately feel what's happening here. And to be honest, I would say, sorry for what we did in the past, but now, we will create brighter life. But they actually follow that purpose in a good way. So they are coming with more and more initiatives to, let's say, better the way we produce stuff.
Okay.
And but it's originally it's a petrochemical company that probably wasn't too friendly for the environment. But nowadays they are bettering themselves, and I see that as a very good development. However, and you had to laugh, I think that it also leads to a lot of cliche purpose descriptions, definitions. So companies are actually
forced to find a purpose.
Yeah, they're forced. They have to, because they all do that, and the audience, but also the government is wanting them to.
But a lot of companies now, if you want investment, you need to have your CSR program set up properly. If you want to,
you have to have women in the board.
Exactly.
And,
you have all those different
diversity.
Things. Exactly. So going back to your internship, so you started your internship here, or you started within advertising communication here in Rotterdam, your internship, and after that, where did you go?
I went to DDB also for an internship, and then I went back to university.
Okay.
Or I went to university.
And why?
I wanted to
get more knowledge.
Exactly. Stimulate my brain.
That's a common purpose as well.
Trying to understand a bit more of how this world works, and I still don't understand it, but that's what I did. And just before I started writing my thesis, the DDB, I worked for DDB Needham. That's also an American ad company. Still there actually in Amsterdam. And they asked me back. So after my internship, and I studied again, and then they offered me a job, and that's how I rolled into advertising. So the reason why I went into advertising was my fascination for creativity still. However, I'm a planner, I'm a strategy person. I'm not the one that comes up with the campaigns. I'm not the art director or the copywriter, but I also see strategy as a function that needs originality. It needs original thinking, like coming up with original solutions to problems. Which I still try to do.
Well, I guess it's the basis at everything you create is the strategy. If the strategy is right, then the execution to follow will be much more. Will have much more of an impact, right?
Yeah. And but that always is a group process. So I work together with creatives, and sometimes creatives have very good strategic ideas, and sometimes not that many times I have creative ideas. But
and the clients, do they have great creative? Do you know any clients that have good ideas?
It's not often, but there are some clients that keep astonishing me.
We won't name names though. So you're at DDB, and so they asked you to come back to DDB, and how many years were you there for?
And that's why I started also as an account executive. So I did account work, and the account person is the intermediary between the client and the creators, basically. So
to keep them separate.
So to keep them out of fights, exactly. So clients are rude bastards, motherfuckers, for the creators, and the creators for clients are unrealistic, crazy guys that always want too big of a campaigns. And then as a middleman, you need to find the middle ground. And also look at the planning and the money. And the money is always important. And so I did that and then I saw the planner there who was actually Kloon. You know Kloon, the writer? He's a Dutch writer.
No, Kloon. Yeah, the writer. Yeah.
So he became a writer, but he was at that time the strategic planner, and I liked what he was doing, and that's what I was heading for.
Okay.
And then I worked at a small agency, and I knew Eric Kessels from study actually, and he started his own agency with Johan Kramer in '96. Creative agency without account people. That was one of the starting ideas. So to their desire to work directly for clients, they said people who have the problem should work directly with the people who come up with the solutions, and no middle people. Okay, leads to fights, but it's also good. And that's how they started Kessel Kramer, and they asked me shortly after the start to join for strategy.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So that was and that was a no-brainer for you to go to Kessels. It was it would give you that. It would give you what you were looking for.
And they were fast-growing, upcoming. They had this Brinker Hotel client. They worked for Nike at that time already, and Heineken, like small jobs from big clients.
Yeah.
And when I joined, I could work on these clients, and we won a pitch for Het Parool, which is a very nice newspaper. Matthijs van Nieuwkerk was the chief editor, so we started doing that. And then we won the a mobile phone brand, which we called Ben.
Ben, yeah.
So we also did the brand development, and that is something I really liked.
So you did. So you guys were responsible for the
name
for the main campaign for Ben.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think it'd be nice to understand kind of the whole campaign or the process and what you did, because I remember it being young. Here, I mean, I think my first telecom provider was Ben, and it really appealed to me as a young person. So I think, it was quite a nice.
So this is the early days of the rising of mobile phone use, and so this is end of the 90s.
Yeah, 98, 99, I would say.
99, exactly. Yeah. And in the Netherlands, there were four big players, like KPN, so the original one, and there was Libetel, and there was Telfort, and
the Dutch Tone, I remember, also
exactly.
Came.
And there were big companies behind it. And then there was one weird one, which was a connection between the Belgium mobile phone company, Belgacom, and Tele-Danmark from Denmark. So they had a company together, and they got a network from, let's say, regional reach. So it was a bit of a, not the best quality. They had to really build it up, but they didn't have a name. They called themselves Brukop, which was a working name for Brussels, Copenhagen, Belgium, Danish. And
not very creative.
Not very creative, but that's good. So they had a problem,
right?
and they came to us. Actually, they already had a name, which was called Bel mij. And Bel mij means call me, and it's also the abbreviation for Bel Maatschappij, the Bell company.
Right. Yeah.
And that's actually where the problem started. So we made a whole campaign for Bel mij. And then they checked Bel mij whether it was legally possible. And they wrote a letter to the Bell company. And Bell company said, no, we don't like this. And so they were without a name. And then they had to come with a new name. And they asked us. And we looked at the market and we saw 4 big players already competing for the audience. And
this is just general audience or specific audience?
No, this is general. I mean, this is like really the start of the boom.
Yes.
So this is like, there was big growth, big budgets. So these companies were also dominating the media with their branding messaging. And they were fighting for, who was the biggest.
Yeah,
so the whole idea was, market share, but also the idea was, I am big, we are big, therefore you can trust us, so come to us.
Yeah.
And we saw this whole battle happening, and then we had to come up with the 5th mobile phone provider, and therefore we had this idea to make it more of a humble initiative, so a humble introduction, and that's how we came up with the name Ben, which means I am, and a very human, simple, transparent approach. So while these big ones were, fighting this war, Ben came as this, very fresh, humble, first introducing himself.
Yeah, and it stood out.
I am Ben, and not saying, come to me. This is my price plan. And,
but it was also, the visuals were very human. Very you identified, you saw yourself in those visuals as well, versus the polished advertising.
Exactly, and that was very new at that time. Not anymore, but at that time, we said we don't use models. We just walk outside our office, and what we see in the street, that is the people we use in the campaign. So we did this outdoor campaign, and it was immediately 25 different pictures of people from all walks of life. And so that was actually saying, we're gonna democratize mobile phone. It's we make it accessible for everybody. And that worked really well. So they actually grew to number 3 in the market, and were then bought by Deutsche Telekom.
But they're back.
And then they came back. Yeah. So what Deutsche Telekom did is they didn't have presence in the Dutch market, and it was an important market for them. So they looked what was happening there, and they bought for a lot of money Ben, and they made it T-Mobile.
Exactly.
And then after 5 or 6 years, they reintroduced Ben because it still had a lot of brand strength, and they made it into a SIM only, like a smaller part of their portfolio. And then Ben actually we also did that reintroduction of Ben, and Ben became in 2 years market leader in the SIM only.
Yeah, because it is seen, I think, because I guess Ben being introduced in Holland as a Dutch brand, it has a lot more people feel connected to it than the T-Mobiles coming out of Germany, the Vodafones, the bigger brands coming in.
Maybe,
so that could be possibly the reason why people remember it and say, hey, actually, let me trust the Dutch brand, even though it's owned by T-Mobile. You still have that local affinity, if you put it that way. Yeah.
Are there other projects, campaigns you worked on that you're really proud of? Because what I've heard, what I've seen, and what I know, all big campaigns and all very good ones. Is there one that stands out for you?
I wouldn't say one. It's in phases, and that's why I'm not ashamed to still be in Kessels Kramer, as I said in the beginning, with more than 20 years. But it goes in phases. So I like that parole campaign we did in the beginning. I'm proud of what we did for Nike. And Ben then was a big chunk. And then we worked for Diesel Jeans for 7 years on a row. We did all the international advertising. So it goes in waves. And I think Citizen M is also a very pivotal client of us, because we were lucky to be involved from the beginning and able to come up with the basics, the name, and helping with the positioning, and still work for them. So we are very proud of that and happy that there are still clients out there that have the guts to be loyal, because many companies are always looking for the new, and maybe there's a new agency somewhere, and then try it out, and so it's loyalty is getting more scarce these days. And earlier we were talking about Timberland. We are in this project, which I find fascinating, aiming for the Gen Z. And Gen Z is seen, and I don't know if it's all 100% true. There's a lot of research about it, but the Gen Z is seen as the creative generation. That they have maybe a very bleak future lying ahead of them, but they don't perceive it like that. So there's a lot of crisis going on, climate change, financial crises, and now we have this crisis as well. But this generation is quite savvy, pragmatic, creative, also very creative because of the ability to use the tools. So we have more and more tools. They're very. My boys, I have 2 boys, 15 and 16. They're quicker than me, of course, on their phone, and they can make all kinds of idea expressions very quickly. Right. And that's what was also the insight for this project for Timberland. So Timberland being this solid, qualitative father, but not so interesting for this younger generation. And they wanted to connect to this Gen Z audience, which is more sneaker focused, of course. Yes. And so Nike is by far the biggest, and they are huge. And then there's Adidas. Close by, and then there's for a very long time nothing, and then there's maybe Puma so the sneaker audience or the sneaker market is huge, and the brown shoe brands are suffering. So Clarks, Echo, Timberland, and so Timberland wanted to connect to this Gen Z audience, but that is a total different ball game. So you cannot come up with very weird shoes and then see if it works. But what they did is they changed their whole way of working, their whole process. So in the past, and that you asked that earlier, in the past they would look at the trends, look at the fashion trends, and then their designers would draw new shoes, design new shoes, and they realized that is a too closed way of working. So they opened up their doors, and they decided to do it more in a collaborative way, more open source, as they say, and not the, let's say, typical collab with Pharrell Williams or that's the easy way, of course, or a star designer. But what they did is they selected, let's say, upcoming shoe designers. About 30. We do different drops, different projects, and we flew these designers to the factory. They have a big factory in the Dominican Republic, and then we made the designers work directly with the people who actually make shoes on the machines, who do the stitching and everything, and then something really nice happens, because it's then all opened up, and you also film it, and we put it on Instagram right away, so everybody can see the whole process of, let's say, shaping the future looks of Timberland. So we take the yellow boot, which is an iconic shoe, but we asked rework it, and we asked the designers, what would you do with this this icon, and develop it for the future. And I find that fascinating, that it's a total different way of working, where you have your audience involved, right, and you use Instagram also for voting. What do you like? Do you like this or that? And you get data, and you use that to keep shaping the future of such a brand.
Okay, cool. So you talked about Timberland and about co-creating with the audience, right? Do you believe that that's where it's going to go with these drops? The Supreme model, right? At the moment, Supreme is going towards a bit of a, everything and everyone and whatnot, and everybody wants to buy it. How do you think that that's going to change that whole exclusiveness? Because I would suspect Nike, in a sense, has also gone down that path by special drops, right? But that's becoming mass now, actually, than focused. I mean, do you think that that's the co-creation is the direction people need to take?
It really works for Timberland. So I could imagine, but the challenge would be that not everybody is a good shoe designer. Mm-hmm. So you need to also find the right people, of course, to step into your design process. Mm-hmm. But I think the opening up of a design process is very interesting, and also leads to a lot of content. and that's what brands want, and the involvement leads to engagement, which leads to data, which you can use to define the further path.
Okay. Yeah. And with data, so you're talking about leads to data. So what do you think that balance is? Because like you said previously, all these clients are going towards, data first, data leads the creative process. What would you say how that balance is between creativity versus gut feeling?
Data is super important, cannot be put aside. So it's a no-brainer, it's very obvious. However, I see data also as a voting system from the large non-creative audience. Mm-hmm. So it can also lead to a mainstream answer to that audience. So you feed the audience what it asks for. And that leads to, let's say, it gets the creativity is being put under pressure.
Right.
And I think it's also a task of companies, of courageous brands to show the new ways to go.
Yeah.
Possibly let's say the industry that listens to data the most is politics, and see what happens. It's you get the voice of the audience, and politicians, smart politicians who want to grow, they will voice what the audience wants to hear.
Yeah.
And that's not always the best way forward. So it also needs courage.
So then it's a mix between what the audience wants to know, but you make sure you put the layers on top of that is a lot more about emotion and a subconscious kind of level, or not?
Exactly. So what you do is you use data, of course, as a very important input and feedback of what you do, and use that to make a new messaging.
Yeah, exactly. One of my final questions that we'll see is, we're in this new crisis. We're in the COVID-19 crisis right now. You could say a lot of companies are pulling back on their marketing budget and so forth. People are talking about the new normal, let's say.
Yeah.
What is your expectation or your thinking of where, advertising, branding, marketing is going to go in the future, or is it too early to tell?
No, most of all, I was hoping that we are going to avoid this this subject, this depressing subject. But
I'm looking at the positive side to support those who are, people are listening who are also just wondering, like, what am I supposed to do now that, the world has changed?
What I hope is that I don't see a lot of, let's say, solutions coming from politics. I hope that companies are going to help shaping this new normal for the positive, and it can go two ways. I was thinking it either is the best break we can have. Okay, we will go down, we go into this crisis, but maybe it opens us up or opens our eyes to what we have been doing and the vulnerability of us as humankind and our planet, because it is said that the decrease of biodiversity is a cause of what is happening, the way we treat animals and the diminishing of natural environment. Mm-hmm. So that it opens up our eyes and makes us more conscious about what we're doing. But on the other hand, it can also make us more egocentric and gives us fear and closes us and makes us more competitive towards each other. So I wouldn't know what.
No, it's too early to tell.
But I think that I hope that a lot of companies see this as an opportunity to push more on purpose.
Yes,
so that there is growth to find.
Okay. And you're in Kessels Kramer right now, and it's been 25 years, 24?
Next year, 25 years.
25 years, exactly.
I'm a bit later.
Exactly. So is that, you see yourself still adding value there, or is there something on your bucket list that you still want to achieve and do within advertising, or is there something you want to give back?
I almost think daily about is it not too comfortable for me, because I work in this great office in a church. I live 5 minutes cycling from my work, and in a good house, and so it's quite comfortable. But in Kessels Kramer, there's always new challenges happening, and it provides me to travel a lot, and the ability to study new things each time. So for Citizen M, you get into the hospitality industry. How does that work? What is important? How do you create new territories, carve out your own story?
Yeah.
And then a different one, and that's actually I want to also mention in the purpose territory, is Fairphone. We work for Fairphone, so I had to study the building of a phone, a mobile phone. So Fairphone is is a mobile phone company, but it builds mobile phones, so handsets.
Exactly.
And they do that with the minimal damage as they can do. So they look at the labor, how it's made, but also with what materials it's made, and because it's a very dirty business, the production of handsets, of smartphones.
So it's the fair trade within handsets that now you see in chocolate and coffee, actually with a physical good like a telephone.
And not only that, but it's also a repairable phone, because I am in the golden cage of Apple. I have an Apple mobile phone, but when it breaks, and it did this morning actually, I got a crack in my in my iPhone, and I cannot repair this. Yeah, so I need to go to Apple, and they're gonna charge me 311 euros. I just looked up. If I would have an Fairphone, I can just order a screen, and then I put the screen on. Or I have a different camera, I can put a different camera on. So the repairability is also an important way forward to be more environmental friendly.
Yeah. So you talk about purpose with those brands, but maybe it's a question you don't really have an answer to, but what do you feel your purpose is, or what's the purpose you want to achieve?
Yeah, I want to create a brighter world for all, of course.
Okay, that's perfect. No, that's where I'd love to end, because unless you you have a bit more.
No, I think the goal is to better yourself every day with mini steps, and for now I have two boys that are 15 and 16, and that's a lot of work for me to show them a perspective that is healthy for them and inspiring. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. No, well, Matthijs, unless you have something else to say or another question.
No, thank you very much.
Matthijs, no, thank you very much for joining us and being our third guest. Looking forward to much more years of working together with you. No, perfect. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Great honor. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks.